make sure that you're really at the heart of the business, understand the business, make sure that the business leaders, whether the CEO or your business leader, that you're really close to what they're doing, you understand what they're doing, and you make sure that you can support them and the business.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another series. I'm Nayan Jadeja from the peopleHum team. Just a quick introduction of peopleHum. It is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management automation platform. The winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built and crafted for employee experiences and the future of work with AI and automation technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and a video channel specifically targeting leaders and young leaders through our Leaders Hum series. I'm excited today to have Andrew Saidy with us. Andrew is the Vice President for Employer Branding and University Relations at Schneider Electric. He is an HR executive with over 15 years of progressive experience with public and private multinationals and international organizations. He's extremely passionate about digital transformations, HR technologies, talent acquisition, and management, including kind of executive coaching, HR business partnering, training and development, and various different aspects of the wide HR space. So Andrew, welcome to the show. Excited to have you with us.
Thank you, Nayan. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to give our audience a little bit of your background, you've been in this space for a while, 15 plus years. If you could just walk us through your journey, as well as what keeps you going after so many years in this space, makes you want to excel in this space.
Sure. Well, thank you for asking. As you said, I've been in HR for many years. I started in finance. My educational background is in economics, and when I started in economics, the only thing that I wanted to do was numbers. And when I got my first job in numbers, I discovered that I do not like numbers. I prefer people. And this is where I thought it's a good segue for me to move into HR. So I started in data, and then I moved to recruiting, and then I moved from recruiting to executive coaching. From executive coaching, I moved to rewards, and then back to HR business partnering. So I've really done various parts of the HR space, as you said. And I think what really keeps me going, and thank you for that question. It's an interesting question to answer. Is definitely employee engagement. I think we do a lot of things in HR, from the digital space to the rewards space to the well-being space to the learning space. And at the heart of all that is employees who are engaged, because engaged employees are excited, they're happy, they're good for the business, they learn, they grow the business. So I think that is what keeps me going. Anything that I could do that has an impact on employees being engaged is something that keeps me going.
I do agree. And I guess especially given this day and age where a lot of people are working from home, right, the employee engagement aspect absolutely is front and center, I think, for organizations. So, okay. And so, you obviously touched upon it, and I don't know if the answer is the same kind of, HR is a very broad space, right? You kind of start from recruiting, and I know you do a lot of kind of brand creation and brand awareness for the organization, all the way to a lot of the things that you talked about. Which ones would you pick as kind of being the most interesting aspects you think for HR executives, and why is that?
I think HR is a puzzle. You definitely need to have all the pieces of the puzzle set in the right place in order for the puzzle to really make a great picture. Of course, some areas are really essential, especially in this day and age. When you look at analytics, when you look at data, when you look at all the different predictive analytics and other types of analytics that we have at the moment, I think this is the future for the HR space. So, of course, for HR executives, this is one area that is definitely of interest. But then when you look at HR, a company cannot really function without having great and performing employees. So definitely the first step is to have a strong employer brand. Today, even with the pandemic that we're going through, we're still in a war for talent. There is a lot of opportunities and a very small number of talented and high performing and top potential employees that can join organizations. So we need to start there. We need to make sure that the brand that we have is a strong brand. We need to make sure that it's appealing. We need to make sure that employees and prospective candidates really want to join our organization. With that in mind, once they are in the organization, we need to make sure that they're stay. And in order for them to stay, we need to make sure that we upskill them and reskill them, and we focus on their learning and talent management and talent development. So I think a lot of these pieces are important along the life cycle of an employee within an organization. Now, the challenge for executives is how can you stretch this life cycle as much as you can? How can you make sure that employees remain engaged with your organization for 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years? Because every time that an employee leaves, they take with them their knowledge and their skills and what you taught them as an organization, and knowledge of customers and partners. So I think that is the big challenge. How can you make all these pieces of the puzzle work together in order to have a stretch the employee life cycle?
Got you. And kind of coming to what you actually asked, which is obviously top of mind right now, given the pandemic. The whole world, almost every country, every company in every country is going through this. Would you say it's different given the situation we are facing?
I think that this pandemic has definitely put the emphasis on digital. I was having another interview the other day, and they asked me, "Can you tell us in 3 words what is the most important thing for HR and employee experience at the moment?" And I said, the most important 3 words are digital, digital, and digital. And I really think that. I think that what this pandemic has done is really emphasize the need for digital. The need for digital did not start yesterday. It's been there for some time, but I think a lot of organizations have been either postponing or taking it slow. And this pandemic has really aggravated the need to go digital. And I think this is the future. We need to make sure that the employee experience is digital. We need to make sure that employees can log in from everywhere. We need to make sure that they can work from everywhere. And today when you look at organizations that are still doing well in this pandemic time, these are the organizations that have been preparing for digital, that have been preparing for their employee workforce to be working remotely any day from anywhere. And these are the companies that continued running with very little disruption to the way they are doing things. So I think if we bring this to the HR space, it really is mirroring the reality that we're in. Digital has to be at the top of what we're doing. How we connect with employees, how employees access their information, how they use it, how they manage their careers, how they manage their learning. A lot of these, if not all of these, have to be now in a digital space.
Yeah, very, very true. Absolutely. Given the fact that you've spent, I guess, 15 plus years, obviously HR 15 years, earlier versus what it is today. And, obviously it keeps evolving, right? So what kind of strategies would you advise for HR to kind of, make sure that an organization stays, agile and effective as things keep changing?
Sure. I mean, when you say that for that long, I remember one of my first jobs, and I was an intern, and it was not called HR in that organization. It was even called personnel. Okay. So I think we've really done a great job since then, because now, we're talking about people organization, we're talking about, human capital. So I think we've come a long way. I think the one thing that we need to keep in mind is HR is a business. Today, if your business is successful, you have to be customer-centric. The most successful businesses out there, the Amazon, the Apples, the Googles, they're all very customer centric. Anything that the customer wants, that is good for the business. And I think today in many organizations, especially organizations that are a bit more traditional or maybe more industrial organizations, older organizations, that focus is not there yet. We put in place policies, we put in place initiatives, we put in place different programs that are organizational centric and not employee centric. So I think if organizations really want to bring it to the next level, they really have to have the employee at the center of the organization. And that means that we need to create new programs around well-being, around family leave policies, around diversity, around inclusion, around making sure that everyone feels welcome, around making sure that employees can engineer their own careers, they can drive their careers, they can drive their own career path within organizations, that employees can choose their learning. Just like you go on Netflix and you choose what you want to watch, employees can choose their own learning. And I think many organizations are on the right track. Some are still behind, but I definitely think the future is all about employee experience. We need to be employee centric in our HR focus.
Okay. I wanted to kind of go back to, what you said in terms of kind of the secret for organizations to be successful. You mentioned, being at the forefront of digital transformation, right? I mean, and you mentioned we are going through this pandemic. Obviously, organizations that have kind of prepared themselves are coming up ahead. What would you advise? Let's say, obviously the companies that have always been ahead on digital transformations are doing well, but what advice would you give to the other organizations in terms of how do you approach this digital transformation? How do you kind of leverage it so that you can actually get and gain the biggest benefit out of it?
Sure. I think the biggest advice that I can give is don't wait. And the time for action is now. If you don't act within this pandemic, then it is going to be too late to act. But you do need to act fast. Because whatever we do today is going to have an impact on our employees and on the brand of us as an organization and as an employer for the next 5 or 10 years. So organizations have to act. Now, the beauty of digital is it really, in most cases, putting things in place really requires you to choose the right product or to choose the right transformation, have a robust change management in place, and go ahead with it. A lot of the reasons why organizations were not digitizing has to do with the culture of the organization, has to do with reluctance internally to really move to digital. And that luxury of reluctance and taking our time is no longer there. With this pandemic, we really need to move fast. So the advice is, if you have not started, if you don't already have a plan, digital is not like building a new airport. It takes years. Digital is not like hardware where you really need to fabricate and create it. Most of the digital solutions that you have now in place are SaaS or software as a service. So it's pretty straightforward. You just need to jump and you need to get going and get going fast. And that's a great convenience and it's a great benefit that if you want to do it, you can do it. You just have to.
Right. Got you. My next question is, I guess, to kind of, continue one of your thoughts when you talked about, the importance of employee engagement, right? And moving more towards kind of high performing teams, right? One is obviously HR needs to realize and kind of focus on the employee engagement. But then there is also the fact that the leader or the immediate manager is a fairly important part of this, right? So in order for companies to help create these, high performing teams, what advice would you give leaders about how do they go about either themselves or partnering obviously with HR to kind of focus on the employee engagement aspect?
Sure. I mean, I like your question because you said it in a way in your question. Even though HR is so super important and it is essential and crucial for organizations, at the end of the day, what really makes or breaks a team is not HR, it's the leader. Employees spend most of their time with their leaders. They get support or not from their leaders. They get coaching or not from their leaders. They get developed or not from their leaders. So whatever programs we in HR put in terms of learning or engagement, this really pales in comparison to a leader's role. Now, I mean, there are thousands of books that have been written about leadership. I think leadership is very personal. I think different leaders behave in different ways. For me personally, I think there are a few basics that you need to have as a leader, and these are the basics that I used to focus a lot on in my previous life as an executive coach. I used to work a lot on coaching executives on their leadership. And I think some of the main areas that I used to focus on is one, recognition. A lot of leaders are very results focused and results oriented. And this is why they get to the roles that they're in, because they can get results, they get promoted. But we need to keep in mind that it's very important to recognize the work that is done by employees. When you look at in general in organization, this is one of the things that leaders are lacking. So one, recognize more. A thank you goes a long way. A well done goes a long way. Sending, a praising email definitely goes a very long way to keep employees engaged. Two, development. Leaders who develop employees, coach them, mentor them, give them feedback, continuous feedback, not once a year, not in light of the yearly appraisal, but continuous feedback, and give the feedback from a perspective of, I want what is best for you. I want to grow you. I want to make sure that you get to shine more. That is definitely something that also goes a long way in engaging employees and in high performance. Because the more you give feedback to employees, the more you grow them, the more they perform. And guess who shines when your employees perform? You do. As a leader, when my direct reports shine and they do a great job, I also shine because I'm their boss. So that's also a second advice. A third advice, I think, for me as a leader, which is also a very essential part of leadership, is really to listen. I think a lot of leaders, because they are results oriented, because they want to get things done, and especially now in light of the pandemic, and we have a lot of things that are on our plate, we tend to be more acting and getting things done rather than listening. But the big advice that I would have is you've got to stop and you've got to listen. You've got to listen for how employees are feeling. You have got to listen to how employees are managing. Everyone is so impacted and affected by this pandemic. People are worried for their kids, and people are worried for their health, and people are worried for their finances. So you as a leader will perform so much better when you stop and you take some time to listen to how are they feeling and comfort them and tell them that if things are going to be okay, tell them that things are going to be okay. And if not, maybe put a plan with them on how you can help them as a leader to make it okay. And I think these, and of course, as I said at the start, I mean, thousands of books on leadership. So I think there are, hundreds of other things that we can do. But for me as a leader, these are really the most important. Recognize and listen, really essential ones.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Would agree with you. Um, Again, want to kind of pick up on one of the other things that you mentioned earlier, saying even though we are in a pandemic, it's still a war for talent, right? And one of the most important aspects for people is trying to, find the best talent. Would love to hear from you in terms of tips or tricks that you might have to help people figure out, how is somebody going to be a cultural fit for an organization?
That's an interesting question. I think the first advice that I would give them is don't always look for a good cultural fit. because culture is diverse. And culture in an organization, especially when the organization is bigger, culture starts, even if you have a very strong culture, you also start getting to have subcultures. And a culture here might be a different culture there. One thing that you have to keep in mind, and I know that in Schneider we definitely keep that in mind, is people move around. Someone starts today in Hong Kong, after 2 years they move to Paris, after a couple of years they move to Boston. I've been very fortunate to do that myself. And you can see that there is slight differences in culture here and there. So I think the most important part in assessing this cultural fit is to see the broader lines of the culture around your employer value proposition. In Schneider, we look for, we offer empowerment, we offer a meaningful purpose, we offer respect of diversity and inclusion. Is this purpose looking to join this company because they share the same meaningful purpose as us as an organization? Do they really follow, or do they really want, or support this mission that we have as an organization to save the environment, have great products, make sure that life is on for everyone, everywhere, and at every moment? And this, in a way, is the mission of Schneider. Do they really respect diversity and inclusion? Is it really a fit? Is it someone who's going to join the organization and make sure that they not only respect diversity and inclusion, but they also promote it, because diversity and inclusion is great for all employees and the employee experience. So I think this is what you need to do. You need to see what exactly is really important for you and make sure that they at least meet that. Now, the caveat is, when organizations start doing that, in many cases, they really take it very literally. And they say, okay, this is the list of cultural attributes that we have, and we want to check all of them. It doesn't work like that, because at the end of the day, you also want employees to come in and stretch themselves to belong to your culture. If from day one they are 100% belonging to your culture, they are 100% aligned, which I don't think exists, then you also want to make sure that you hire talents that are maybe a bit out of the box of your boxed culture, and then they can grow and they can and they will contribute to your culture with their own culture.
Got you. Great. Andrew, just any kind of last minute thoughts or advice that you would give, to kind of either young leaders or people in the HR space as you look ahead, given the times that we are kind of living in right now?
Sure. I think the one advice that I would give is make sure that you're very close to the business. In many cases and in many organizations that I look at, you feel and you see that HR is a function. HR is there for policies and compliance, and I can tell you for sure that it is not the case. So I think the advice that I would give to HR leaders is make sure that you're really at the heart of the business, understand the business, make sure that the business leaders, whether the CEO or your business leader, that you're really close to what they're doing, you understand what they're doing, and you make sure that you can support them and the business. In most cases, if not all cases, supporting employees will lead to supporting the business, because engaged employees are good for the business. And I think this is where our role in HR really has to be central for the business. Decisions that the business makes, have to come from a customer perspective, but also have to align with the employee perspective. And I think in Schneider, we're very fortunate that our HR function is really embedded in the business. Our HR business partners understand the business. They know how to benefit the business, how to impact the business. And I think that for any HR leader, if you feel that your organization is not there yet, then you have to get it to get to that place where it really is an essential part of the business and not just a function.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Andrew, it really has been a pleasure having you on board. I appreciate, the time and you sharing your insights and views.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks